Hello and welcome to the AeroVee engine assembly video series. I'm Joe Norris at Sonex Aircraft LLC. In this series of video segments, we are going to walk through the assembly of an AeroVee engine. We will be following the sequence called out in the AeroVee assembly manual. The manuals get updated much more often than the video series. So if there is a case where the manual and the video series disagree, your manual that came with your engine is the guide for you to follow. But in general, all of the steps that we have in the manual will be shown in the video series. We hope you enjoy the video series. We hope you enjoy putting together your AeroVee engine, and we look forward to seeing your airplane flying. In this segment, we're going to talk about mounting the engine on the airframe. But first, let me talk a little bit about preparing the airframe for the engine. There's several things that you will mount in the engine compartment that don't go on the engine itself, but instead go on the airframe. And the first things you'll mount probably will be the ignition coils for the secondary ignition. There's two of these, and they are mounted on the firewall, and then your secondary ignition wires will come over and fire these coils, and then the spark plug wires coming out of these coils go to the bottom plugs on your engine. So you'll have to mount two of these coils on the firewall, and you'll also have to mount your voltage regulator on the firewall, and the wires coming from your stator, from your alternator, will go on the outer connectors of the voltage regulator, and then your feed wire for the power coming out comes out of the center one. So these things have to be mounted on the firewall. If you ever think you're going to put a turbo on the airframe, or if you're already planning to put a turbo on, make sure that most of these things are mounted towards the left side of the firewall, and also your battery box as well. The turbo itself sits on the right-hand side of the engine. As you're sitting in the airplane, on the passenger side, if you will, is where the turbo and the exhaust from the turbo is all concentrated. So you want to leave that side of the firewall as open as you can so as not to interfere with the turbo mechanism itself. So most of your other firewall components, your battery box, your coils, your regulator, your RDAC if you're using an MGL type or other electronic instrument where you have something on the firewall that gathers the data from the engine and sends it to your instrument. Those things need to be segregated over to the left-hand side of the firewall as much as possible to leave room for your turbo. If you're not going to use the turbo, then you have some more real estate and you can spread those things out on your firewall a little bit more. A little bit of pre-planning in that case makes a lot of help for you. Now when you go to mount the engine on the airframe itself, your engine mount will already be attached to your airframe, and you're going to mount the engine onto the mount using these four large locations on the accessory plate. Now at each location, you're going to have these rubber bumpers that are going to go on there. These actually, the side facing the firewall slides on the motor mount before you put the motor on. Then after you've lifted your motor into place, this will be on the motor mount and it'll be tucked into the back side of the accessory plate. You'll slide this one on the front side of the accessory plate, push that in there nice and tight on that motor mount spacer there, and then you'll put a large washer like this on each side, one on the front and one on the back, and then your motor mount bolt goes through there, and that's all shown on your plans exactly how to put that all together. But that's the way you'll get the engine mounted on your firewall or on your motor mount. All your other accessories mount on the firewall, and then you'll be ready after that to finish putting your intake system back on and your exhaust system and build your cooling baffles and complete your installation.